Young Jamie Edgeworth, Part 2. Jamie felt that he must sort out the couple of farms on the Irish estate. He had one or two ideas which could bring them back into profit, not enough to keep the whole estate financially sound, but enough to begin putting it back where it should be. "I must arrange my trip home," Jamie said to Mrs. Trent a couple of days later. "I presume you are settled financially whilst I am away?" "Yes, sir. I have no worries in that respect, and whilst you are away, I will bring another couple of rooms up to scratch. When will you be leaving?" "I shall go to the docks later today and see Wendell Fuller, who will know what passages are available," said Jamie. At the docks later that day, Jamie made his way to the Marchant and Fuller building and was directed to Wendell's office, where he was warmly welcomed. He noticed that James Marchant was in his office, and they acknowledged one another. Jamie could have gone to the booking office, but he was used to dealing with the hierarchy of a company. With his passage booked for 2 days' time, he was about to leave when James came to talk to him. "I hadn't realised that you were still in town," said James. "Liza is arranging a small gathering next week. Perhaps you and Evelyn would like to join us." "That's very kind of you, but I am leaving in 2 days, and I know that Evelyn is taking a trip to France shortly. Thank you for your invitation. Please extend my apologies to Mrs. Marchant," said Jamie. "I will, and do let us know when you are next in town, as I'm sure Liza would enjoy arranging a gathering at that time," said James Marchant. Jamie noticed a very contented look in James Marchant's eyes, and he envied that contentment and wished that he could achieve that feeling. Wendell was watching him, and Jamie had the distinct impression that he could read his mind, which he sincerely hoped he could not. James returned to his office, and Wendell commented that Evelyn's father had booked her passage to France, and that it appeared that they would be both leaving on the same day, although not at the same time. "I'm sorry that you and Evelyn won't be here for Liza's small soirée. She's proving to be an excellent hostess. I'm sure that James enjoys such gatherings, although I know he likes to spend his evenings just with Liza, but he indulges her, and she does everything to make him happy. They are well suited," said Wendell. Jamie realised that Wendell was once again giving him a warning within his message. "Indeed they are," was all that Jamie could think of saying. Jamie and Evelyn met at the docks on the day of their departure. Her father was with her, and he greeted Jamie rather frostily. "I hope that when my daughter returns, you will have sorted out your differences and name a date for your wedding. I don't blame you entirely for this separation. I know that Evelyn can be difficult, and unfortunately, I do see a similarity in your characters. However, I am sure that you will eventually rub along nicely together, and of course she will bring much to such a marriage," said Evelyn's father. "I had not realised that you had friends in France," said Jamie in an attempt to change the subject. "They are distant relatives, although we have only been in their company on a few occasions, but they are quite respectable," said Mr. Carstairs. Wendell sauntered over to the group and gently ushered Evelyn and her father towards the appropriate vessel, giving Jamie the opportunity to say farewell and make his way to his own vessel. Somehow Wendell always knew what was needed. The journey to Surrey for Jamie was not difficult, and as his home came into view, he took a deep breath, as he knew that his father was expecting him to have settled on a date for his marriage to Evelyn. Luckily his father was not at home, and he was told that he was staying at his club that evening, so Jamie knew that he would be gambling away what little money that they had. He sighed and presumed that some of the family jewels were back at the pawnbrokers, and Jamie would have to negotiate yet again to ensure that they were not sold on to someone else before he would be able to redeem them. Momentarily he wondered whether he should bother, as he had better use for the small amount of money that he would need to make sure that they weren't sold on to anyone. But the Edgeworth jewels meant a great deal to him. His father returned home the following day, and his mood was not good. He growled at the staff and stomped up to his room. Jamie was in the library, and he sighed when he heard his father's return. He seemed to be sighing a great deal when he was back in Surrey. He knew that he only had to wait a while before his father would come searching for him, and he was right, as he soon heard his father calling his name. "I'm in the library, father," called Jamie. He might as well get the bad news over with as soon as possible. "What are you doing in there, reading, I suppose?" said his father. "No, I'm just looking at the estate accounts, and they do not make good reading," said Jamie. "Have you set a date?" he asked, and Jamie assumed he meant for his wedding. "No, father, there may not be a wedding," said Jamie. "That's no surprise to me," said his father, much to Jamie's surprise. "I heard about your little spat, and that did you no credit." "It's amazing how gossip travels," said a very annoyed Jamie. "Well, you had better smooth things over with the lady and get that other one out of your mind," said Jamie's father. Jamie sighed again. "We attended a very nice birthday party, and we met the new Mrs. Marchant, and Evelyn got it into her head that I made inappropriate moves towards her. I did not even dance with her, and she greeted us very charmingly, and Evelyn crassly commented on her jewellery. It was most embarrassing for me." "You did not ogle the new Mrs. Marchant then?" said his father. "I will admit she was difficult not to admire, but she and her husband are devoted to one another," said Jamie. "That wouldn't stop you if you were so inclined," said Jamie's father. "That is ridiculous. It was Evelyn's father who made the decision for her to go to France for a while, and one of the reasons why he wanted that was the problem that she had with her gambling habits. I don't need to tell you how destructive gambling can be," said Jamie, who was desperately trying to take his father's attention away from Liza Marchant. His father sat down sharply. "Did she lose much?" he asked. "Apparently so. I had already told her that I was not in a position to get her out of trouble. Her father has insisted that she no longer attends any gambling establishments. He was quite happy that we spend time apart, and felt that it would do us some good," said Jamie, who was really telling a half-truth. "We can't have somebody coming into the family who will lose what little we have," said his father. "I know we must carry on the family name, but not at the cost of the Edgeworth estate." Jamie stared at his father in surprise. "You certainly display double standards. It's fine for you to gamble our fortune away, but God help anyone else." "What's the Marchant woman like?" asked his father. "I told you, she's married and happily so," said Jamie. "But I can see that you wish it was otherwise," said his father. "They are a rich family, aren't they?" "What are you suggesting?" asked a puzzled Jamie. "Well, her husband is old. She will need a young lover soon, and sometimes young lovers get given presents, and that could be quite lucrative," said Jamie's father. "Are you saying that you want me to sell myself to a woman?" said a shocked Jamie. "That is a disgusting suggestion. What is so different to you paying for a mistress?" said his father. "If you weren't so strapped for cash, you would see exactly what the difference is. Your suggestion is disgusting, and when you think about it you will realise just how appalling it is. I will not be selling myself to anyone, and I would thank you not to spread such a notion which could damage Mrs. Marchant's reputation. She would never consider such a situation. She is a lady and knows exactly how to act as such," said Jamie. "Aha," said his father, "so you do have feelings for the lady." "My feelings are none of your business, and I would just add that who and when I marry will be solely my choice. If you carry on with your gambling habits and we lose our estates, so be it. I shall find my own wife, and I refuse to discuss it with you ever again. Go off to your club and drink yourself into oblivion and gamble everything away. I will do my best to keep a roof over our heads, but if it goes, then I'm sure I will find a means to keep myself, and it won't be by selling my body to some rich woman," said Jamie as he stormed from the library and moved to his room to organise what he would need to spend some time with Anthony and Diana. It was always a breath of fresh air going to the Fawkes household. Hector could sometimes be a nuisance, but Anthony and Diana were calming influences. Lady Fawkes could often be a little snooty, but he always managed to put her in a good mood. Also, there was nothing that he couldn't tell Anthony, and it would never go further. "Have you set the date?" asked Diana, shortly after Jamie had arrived. And then she saw the look on his face. "Oh, there seems to be a problem. Evelyn and I are having a little time away from one another. She has gone to France for a while, and we will see how we feel when she returns," said Jamie. "Oh," said Diana. "I think I'll just make sure that your room is ready, Jamie. I presume that you would like to stay with us." "If I may, Diana," said Jamie, and Diana could see that he wanted a quiet word with Anthony. "Did you and Evelyn have another disagreement?" asked Anthony when Diana had left the room. "I didn't think that we had many disagreements," said Jamie, with a puzzled look on his face. "You do, Jamie," said Anthony. "Even when just talking, you both seem to have opposite views to one another. I know that she would be good for your family, but I don't think that either of you will settle happily. However, it is not up to me to tell you how to run your life. What was the argument about this time?" Jamie proceeded to tell him about James Marchant's birthday party, and how they had met the new Mrs. Marchant, and that Evelyn accused him of ogling Liza all evening, and how they had a huge argument about it at the gambling house the following day in front of everyone, including Frederick Marchant. "And were you ogling Liza Marchant?" asked Anthony. "She was difficult to keep your eyes away from, but I didn't even dance with her. She was so charming, and Evelyn was so crass by commenting on her jewellery, which I must admit was quite admirable. And then Evelyn asked if she had met Lady Redfern and Lady Fawkes. I could see that Liza saw her comments for exactly what they were, and that was name-dropping. If she hoped to put Liza at a disadvantage, she was wrong. Liza just smiled and said that she had yet to have that pleasure," said Jamie. All this time Anthony was looking at him thoughtfully. "Ah, yes, so you were ogling her. Well, I wasn't the only one, but she skillfully kept us all at arm's length and made it obvious that there was no one but James for her," said Jamie. "I suppose your father is not happy that your wedding plans have yet to be organised," said Anthony. "He made some very disgusting suggestions," commented Jamie. "Did he? I suppose some of the Edgeworth jewels are back at the pawnbroker's," said Anthony. "Yes, and he suggested that I sell myself to some rich woman with an older husband, like Liza Marchant. I believe his words were, 'It could be quite lucrative,'" said Jamie. "I decided that I needed to calm down, and I do apologise for putting myself upon you and Diana." "You know you never need to ask. We have known one another a long time now. You are considered family," said Anthony. Jamie stayed for a few days, and then returned to Edgeworth House. His father wasn't there, and Jamie assumed that he was at his club. For the next couple of months, Jamie concentrated on keeping the estate just within profit. He had seen the pawnbroker and arranged that the jewels were not sold on to anyone else, and he said that he hoped that he would be able to redeem them in a relatively short time. Evelyn returned from France and contacted him. She made arrangements to visit Anthony and Diana, and she hoped that they could meet on a few occasions. Diana invited him to stay whilst Evelyn was with them, and reluctantly Jamie agreed. Lady Fawkes was holding court with Evelyn, and Jamie sensed that she would have preferred to have her as a daughter-in-law rather than Diana. Hector was making it obvious that he had better things to do than spend the weekend with his family. He had been accepted in the army and would have liked to have spent some time with his fellow officers rather than a gathering which included Evelyn. Evelyn was expounding the virtues of her family in France and the wonderfully elegant place it was with so many interesting buildings. "I'm surprised that you didn't stay there then," said Jamie. "Well, you wouldn't know what was elegant if it was standing in front of you," snapped Evelyn. "Well, it's not standing in front of me," said Jamie tartly, at which Hector snorted and tried to cover his amusement by coughing. Jamie realised that both Anthony and Diana were watching him, and Anthony's words from a few weeks before regarding disagreements between himself and Evelyn came back to mind, and he was determined to try to hold his tongue. "Have you not been back to Ireland recently?" asked Evelyn. "No, not for some weeks now," said Jamie. "So you haven't been in the Marchants' company? I am surprised that you haven't taken a little trip to Ireland so that you can get to know that Liza better, said Evelyn. Jamie closed his eyes and counted to 10, but it was no good. He still could not bear hearing any detrimental words against Liza. I thought that you would have got those foolish thoughts out of your mind. You made an idiot of yourself at the club and embarrassed me with your baseless accusations. You have said what you think here now, and even though it isn't true, it will stay in everyone's minds, and that is very unfair. You really must stop spreading gossip, snapped Jamie. Come on, you two. Can't you at least try to be friends, said Anthony. My apologies. That was unforgivable of us, said Jamie, and he was determined to be nice to Evelyn. But Evelyn did not seem to want to move away from the subject of the Marchants. I bumped into Frederick Marchant just before I came here, said Evelyn. He's James Marchant's son, isn't he? Said Diana. Yes, that's right. He's not at all happy having a stepmother who is 2 years younger than he is, said Evelyn. He prefers to spend his time at the gambling club rather than at home. How do you know that? Snapped Jamie. Have you been gambling again? Evelyn was annoyed at herself for opening herself up to criticism, as she had been to the club, and she knew that Jamie was now very much against gambling. I just met 1 or 2 friends there for an hour or so. Frederick Marchant was there, and I'm afraid he lost heavily, said Evelyn. He needed someone to talk to, and I obliged. Jamie looked at her closely and knew that she was keeping something from him. Diana, Lady Fawkes and Evelyn started discussing clothes, and then they went on to gossip about various people. They then withdrew from the dining room, leaving Jamie, Anthony and Hector to enjoy a glass of port. They talked about Hector's new career, and he said that he was really looking forward to leaving home and having some sensible company. So you don't think that I'm sensible, smiled Anthony. You know what I mean, said Hector. Mother fusses over me, and that is driving me to distraction. Evelyn is being a little argumentative, but Diana is a calming influence on them both. I don't think that Mother is treating her as she should, but that is up to you and Diana to sort out. Are you really seriously still thinking of marrying Evelyn, Jamie? We do seem to be airing our differences a little too publicly, said Jamie. I suppose we will eventually get together, but at the moment it seems better if we stay apart. What's all this talk of the Marchants? Asked Hector. Oh, it's nothing, Hector. James Marchant's new wife is very pretty, and Evelyn showed jealousy of her, said Jamie, and then tried to change the subject. Really? Did Evelyn have reason to show jealousy? Asked Hector. No, she did not, said Jamie with some annoyance, and his annoyance increased when he saw that Hector was smiling knowingly. Why does everyone think that she has cause to be jealous? Because we know you, Jamie, and we know that you are partial to a pretty face, as we all are, said Hector. Do you realise that the new Mrs. Marchant has been a topic of conversation here in England over the past few weeks, and she has no idea that she is even known about, said Anthony. I'm sure that she and her husband would not be happy about that. You're right, Anthony, said Hector. It is very unfair, as it is not doing her reputation any good. You must stop Evelyn gossiping in that way. You must realise that I am incapable of stopping Evelyn from doing anything, and especially when she has fixated on a topic, said Jamie. Are you still engaged? Asked Hector. I suppose so, said Jamie reluctantly. I can see that you are ecstatically happy about that, said Hector sarcastically. Oh, well, it's your life, and rather you than me. It's none of your business, Hector, said Anthony. Hector is entitled to his opinion, said Jamie. But let's talk about what you will soon be doing. They spent the rest of the time discussing Hector's army future, and then eventually joined the ladies in the drawing-room. Evelyn returned to Belfast, and Jamie stayed in England for the following few months. He knew that he either had to make the decision to marry Evelyn or to completely break off their engagement, and he decided on the latter. He knew that Evelyn would not be too happy about it. She would only have to find a way to save face to her family and friends. Jamie wondered if she would return to France for a while. Over the previous months, Jamie had managed to redeem the Edgeworth jewels. He had gradually paid off the debt, and he had to admit that the pawnbroker had been very patient over them. His only regret was that he had never managed to redeem the Edgeworth diamonds. They had been pawned many years before, and eventually had been sold to pay the debt. Jamie decided that the time had come to go to Belfast and face Evelyn and her family and finally make the break. But before he left, he packed up the Edgeworth emeralds, sapphires and rubies and took them to Anthony's for safe keeping. He knew that when his father realised that they were missing, he would rant and rave, but Jamie had left other pieces in their safe, and they really meant nothing to the family, so his father could do what he wished with those. He also left a note in the safe so that his father would not think that they had been stolen. From Belfast docks, Jamie made his way to the house and was warmly greeted by Mrs. Trent. The house was beginning to look more presentable, and the next step would be to attempt to get the Edgeworth lands in Ireland working efficiently. But that was going to be a tall order, and he knew that his concentration should be on the Edgeworth estate in Surrey. Jamie was slowly getting ready to make a visit to Evelyn's family home when there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Trent came in to say that there was a Mr. Carstairs to see him. Jamie frowned and asked Mrs. Trent to show him into the drawing room. When Jamie entered the drawing room, he was surprised at how concerned Mr. Carstairs appeared. "What has happened, Mr. Carstairs? You look rather worried," said Jamie. "I had hoped that Evelyn would be here with you, although that would not really have been good for her reputation," said Mr. Carstairs. "No, she is not here, sir. I am not quite sure what you are telling me," said Jamie. "No matter. I am sure she must be staying at a friend's, and forgot to let her mother or I know. I am sorry to bother you, Jamie," said Mr. Carstairs, and he got up to leave. "I am not a fool, Mr. Carstairs. I can see that you are more concerned than you want me to know. Has she found someone else?" asked Jamie. "I really do not know, Jamie, but I have my suspicions. I know that you and she have been having differences for a while now," said Mr. Carstairs. "I have asked around the friends that I know, but I'm sure there are some that you know and I do not. I tried at Anthony's, but they are not in Belfast at present. Do you think that she would be at the Marchant's house? She talks about them a great deal, although not in a very good light, apart from the son, Frederick, I believe his name is." "I don't think that she would be there." "How long has she been missing?" asked Jamie, who was now becoming quite concerned. "Since yesterday afternoon. She received a note from somebody and then disappeared without a word to either her mother or me," said Mr. Carstairs. "I will go to all the people that I know Evelyn knows, but I will assure you that I will be discreet. They will not know that Evelyn has disappeared. I will just visit them and during conversation will ask if they have seen her recently. I may well find her at one of their houses," said Jamie. "Go home, Mr. Carstairs. I'm sure that I will find her, and that there is a good reason for her disappearance." "Thank you, Jamie. I really don't think that you and Evelyn will make a very good match. You rub each other up too much the wrong way. Your household would never be a contented one, and that gives me no pleasure to say so," said Mr. Carstairs. Jamie quickly donned his coat and called Mrs. Trent to say that he did not know when he would return, as he was going to visit one or two friends. "Are you going to see Mr. Frederick Marchant?" asked Mrs. Trent. "No, I wasn't. Why do you ask?" "No real reason. It's just that he called a while ago and was disappointed that you were not at home. He had an overnight bag with him and muttered that it was no matter and that he would go to the Fullers instead," said Mrs. Trent. Jamie frowned and wondered if that had anything to do with Evelyn disappearing. He didn't know the Fullers well enough just to turn up on their doorstep, so he decided to go to the docks and see if Wendell was there. He tried to think what reason he could tell him why he was there, but he need not have worried, as he bumped into Frederick near their offices. Frederick looked rather unhappy, and Jamie commented that Mrs. Trent had said that he had called. "Yes, I needed somewhere to stay, but you were not at home. So I went to the Fullers instead," said Frederick. "So I understand," said Jamie. "May I ask why you needed somewhere to stay? Not that you wouldn't be welcome." "My problems with gambling came to light. My father thought that Liza had taken some items and pawned them, but it was me. For a while it created a misunderstanding between them, but naturally that has been sorted out now. However, I am being sent to New York for the foreseeable future. My father feels that a time away will help me, and we have a very good manager in New York. I'll be able to learn much from him, said Frederick. I'm sorry that you have had difficulties. I know only too well what gambling can lead to. When do you leave? Asked Jamie. Tomorrow. It's very short notice, but I have been very foolish and somebody else suffered because of me, said Frederick, and Jamie assumed that the person to suffer was Liza, as she had initially been accused of pawning items. Have you seen Evelyn? Asked Jamie. Frederick looked rather sheepish and nodded. She is staying at the Whites. She had been helpful to me in the past. In what way helpful to you? Asked Jamie. She helped me sort out a way to pay some of my debt, said Frederick. I hope it was nothing illegal, commented Jamie. Frederick didn't answer, which worried Jamie. Finally he asked where the Whites lived and who they were. Mrs. White is one of Evelyn's card-playing friends, said Frederick, and he told Jamie where the Whites could be found. Jamie wished Frederick good luck with his new life in America and hoped that it wouldn't be too long before he returned. So Liza had been blamed for Frederick's misdeeds, thought Jamie. But his priority was to find Evelyn. Whatever she had done to help Frederick was between them. He had promised that he would find Evelyn for her father, and that was precisely what he was going to do. He was also going to tell Evelyn that they were not suited, and it was best that they went their separate ways. Evelyn looked shocked when Jamie was shown into Mrs. White's sitting room. Jamie noted that she was wearing a dress that was more suited to evening wear, and he assumed that she had been wearing it the previous evening. How did you know I was here? Asked Evelyn. I bumped into Frederick Marchant, and he thought that this was where you may be. Your father is very concerned about you, as was I when I heard that you were missing, said Jamie. He never knows whether I am at home or not, said Evelyn sharply. Well, he does now, and he asked if I could help to find you. What has happened, Evelyn? Why are you in hiding? Asked Jamie. Evelyn had an aloof look on her face and told Jamie that it was none of his business. We are still engaged, Evelyn, so it is my business, and your father came to me for help. There is no point in not telling me, because I have a feeling that I will soon hear whatever it is that has happened, said Jamie with some annoyance. I have been threatened, said Evelyn starkly. By whom? Is it to do with the gambling club? How much do you owe? Asked Jamie. £300, said Evelyn. Jamie sat down in shock. I'll have to visit them and see what I can negotiate on your behalf. Do you think that your father can cover that debt? I don't think that you realise that my father is also a member of that club, and his luck is about as bad as mine, but he does manage to cover his debts. I don't think that he can cover mine at this moment in time, said Evelyn in a rare moment of honesty. Well, we'll have to think of a way to get you out of this trouble, but there is no point in hiding away from the world. Why are you being threatened? Normally you can negotiate about these things, asked Jamie. I was rather foolish. I told them that they didn't stand a chance of getting the money, and as it was only a silly card game, what was all the fuss about? Said Evelyn. Jamie looked at her in horror. It's a gambling debt, and that becomes a debt of honour. What have they said they would do? Asked Jamie. Well, go to my parents for a start, then go to you. They were then going to get a court order to seize goods, and if they couldn't do that, they were going to send me to debtor's prison. I told them that it wasn't possible for a gambling debt, said Evelyn with her nose in the air. Of course they can, shouted Jamie. Have you taken leave of your senses? If your father can't pay your debt, I'll just have to negotiate with them and see what arrangement I can make with them. If you go and see them, then they may insist that you pay, as you are my future husband, said Evelyn. What have you done, Evelyn? Have you said that I would pay? Asked Jamie. Well, I did say that I was marrying the future Lord Edgeworth. They knew that you were a member of the club, and they said that they would therefore hold you responsible, said Evelyn. Jamie was now looking at Evelyn with a mixture of surprise, horror, and finally hatred. I have always been honest with you, Evelyn. I have always said that I am not in a position to help you out of any financial situation. I also believe that we must think again about our association. Even your father thinks that we are not suited, said Jamie. If it was that Liza woman, I bet you would find a way to get her out of trouble. You have jewels that I know your father uses to pay his debts. You could use those to help me. You know I would pay you back, and you know I am capable of being a good wife to you. I know all the right people and how to be an excellent hostess, which will help your future ambitions. You are lying. My father is extremely happy with our association. It's that Liza who has turned your head, shouted Evelyn. You don't know what you are talking about. I haven't seen Liza Marchant since around the time of the birthday party that we went to all that time ago. How dare you accuse me of such things? And another thing, I have worked hard to redeem the family jewels, and I have taken steps to keep them out of my father's hands, and there is no way that I will utilise them to pay your debts, said Jamie. Evelyn went very quiet and then said, Jamie, I don't know what to do. Firstly, we must get you home. Your father will be relieved. He has been very concerned for your safety. It was unfair of you to worry your family in that way, said Jamie. Evelyn agreed, and Mrs. White offered her carriage to take them on the short journey to the Carstairs' home. Mrs. Carstairs looked at Evelyn with great relief, whereas Mr. Carstairs reacted with fury, demanding to know where she had been for the last day. Jamie stood back and let Evelyn tell them where she had been, and with embarrassment she said the reason why. Why didn't you just come home and tell us what the problem had been, said a concerned Mrs. Carstairs. I was ashamed, and also didn't want to add to our family's already precarious financial difficulties. I thought that perhaps I could come up with a solution, so that you would never know how stupid I had been, and also I didn't want Jamie to know, as I am aware that he has become very much against gambling, and with good reason, said a suitably humbled Evelyn. Well, as there is nothing that I can do to help, I will leave you to your discussions. My only suggestion would be that you sell your engagement ring, as you will no longer need it, and perhaps take another extended trip to France, said Jamie. I am sorry that it has ended this way, but as your father has already said, we really were not compatible. We both would have to make great changes if we were to continue with our relationship, and I do not think that either of us would be capable of such. I will look such a fool if we break our engagement now. The gossip from the club will spread when it becomes known that you have broken off our engagement. My standing in social life will be over, said Evelyn. I could say that you should have thought about that before you got into such deep trouble. You knew that I could not have a wife who was susceptible to gambling. I have spent most of my life getting my father out of such difficulties. I am not prepared to have to worry about a second member of my family creating the same problems. I will not be informing anyone of our current situation. What you tell others is entirely up to you, said Jamie. Good day to you all. Jamie left their house and realised that he now had a spring to his step, and he did not feel guilty about it. At his home, Mrs. Trent had prepared a supper for him, which he ate with great relish. I shall be booking my passage back to England tomorrow, Mrs. Trent, and I'm not sure when I shall be returning. But I should be pleased if you would continue with bringing this house up to scratch, said Jamie. Just before lunch the following day, Jamie made his way to the docks to book his passage, and as he arrived so did a carriage, and out stepped Liza Marchant. She turned and lifted out a rather large picnic basket, and smiled at the young lad who rushed over from the Marchant and Fuller offices and took it from her and walked back into the offices. She caught sight of Jamie and smiled at him, and once again he felt his heart beating quickly, but all his problems of the past days lifted, and he went forward and smiled down at her. Mr. Edgeworth, are you arriving or leaving? She asked with a smile. I've just made my arrangements to leave tomorrow, said Jamie. You forget that my name is Jamie. Of course. Everyone seems to be leaving Belfast. Frederick left this morning. He will be spending some time in New York. So I understand. I bumped into him yesterday. I suppose it will give him more experience in the running of the business, said Jamie. What are you doing with a picnic basket? Every now and again I come down and bring James some lunch. And as Frederick has just left, I thought it would cheer him up, said Liza. "It's rather a large basket for James. Does he have a large appetite?" smiled Jamie. Liza laughed. "No, he doesn't, but I always bring more than necessary. Some of the people who work for him don't have many special things to eat, so what we leave they're allowed to take. Quite often those with large families can only afford the bare necessities, so they take a few treats for their children. James indulges me in my whims." Another carriage drew up, and out stepped Amelia, and once again a young lad came forward and took out an equally large picnic basket and disappeared with it into the offices. Jamie lifted his hat and acknowledged Amelia. "I suppose Wendell also indulges your whims, Mrs. Fuller?" Amelia looked confused, and Liza said that she would explain it later. "Would you like to join us for lunch, Mr. Edgeworth?" asked Amelia. "As you can see, we have plenty." "That's very kind of you, but thank you, no," said Jamie. "I must get organised as I am leaving tomorrow." "You must let us know next time you are in Belfast, and I'll arrange a small gathering for you and Evelyn," said Amelia. "Just a few people that you already know." "That's very kind of you. I'm not sure when I will be returning, but I definitely will let you know," said Jamie. Liza and Amelia then made their way to the offices, and Jamie watched them go. He turned and caught sight of Evelyn, who seemed to have been watching from the shadows, and Jamie stopped and waited for her to join him. "Have you been arranging your passage to France?" asked Jamie. "Yes, my father is at the booking office. We don't have your influence with the owners, so we have to deal with the minions," snarled Evelyn. "I see you and Liza were gazing at one another for everyone to see. You obviously weren't telling the truth when you said that you hadn't seen her." "For God's sake, Evelyn, this is the first time that I have caught sight of her since the time of the birthday party, and as you saw, Mrs. Fuller joined her immediately. Besides, it is now none of your business who I see and who I speak to," said Jamie. "No doubt you will enjoy some of the strange ways that she and her husband get up to," said Evelyn. "What are you talking about?" said Jamie. "He likes to beat her, you know, so I presume that she also enjoys that," said Evelyn. "Don't be ridiculous. That's something that's just in your perverted mind," snapped Jamie, who was quite shocked at Evelyn even knowing that such things did go on between some couples. "It's not. Frederick told me," said Evelyn. "Frederick has been banished to New York, and I'm not surprised if he is brandishing gossip like that around town. You can't believe anything he says at the moment, as he is not happy with the situation, and if you spread such gossip, you will be in more trouble than you are already," said Jamie. "Goodbye, Evelyn. I hope you have a safe journey, and mind what I said." Jamie knew that what Evelyn had conveyed could not be true. The look in Liza's eyes told a different story. He knew that she would never tolerate such treatment. Of that he felt confident, although what Evelyn had said did prey on his mind. Over the course of time, he did begin to wonder at Evelyn's words, and those words led to him making the biggest mistake of his life, a mistake which took nearly 20 years to rectify. Jamie Edgeworth appears throughout the Liza Marchant series. If you have enjoyed this early years short story, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and all comments are appreciated. Next will be the early life of the handsome Patrick Kelly.